They lifted all their standards, and within 5 years, they lost 50% of their membership.
Mm. So Bob, the change in policy would be from the way it is now. And why don't you kind of delineate for our listeners? There's a national policy that all the local chapters have to follow. And that policy right now is no homosexual leaders, no homosexual members. And the Boy Scouts have been legally protected, at least through the court system. They are allowed under the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of association. They are allowed to keep that policy in place. But you're saying if they go ahead and kind of punt on this and say, well, the local chapters can decide, that's really when the caving in process will begin. Is that right?
Yeah, and what they did was they had a meeting February 4th to the 6th, board of directors meeting, where they took up a vote. And about a week before, everybody got wind that this change was being considered, and they got an earful from America. I mean, people went nuts. They jammed the phone lines, they emailed them, they threatened them, they said, boy, you do this, I'll take my son out. And so they punted. They're going to reconsider it on May 22nd through the 24th in Irving, Texas, where their headquarters is. I think between now and then, people ought to be stepping up the pressure, and especially parents who have scouts. Because this, the Scout Oath says you have to be morally straight, and you have a belief in God. And atheist groups and homosexual groups have been trying to get rid of that oath for years. Even feminist groups have tried to put girls in the Boy Scouts, which would totally ruin the Boy Scouts. And this is an attack on one of America's finest institutions. They've been around since 1910. They help mold boys into men. They teach them to be morally straight and personally responsible. This is our pipeline for self-governing citizens. I can't emphasize enough how important this battle is. And people ought to give the Boy Scouts a piece of their mind. At the local level, they ought to tell their leaders at the local level, please contact the nationals and say, do not do this. You'll leave us totally vulnerable to what comes. And, in liberal jurisdictions like Philadelphia, the local council was about to cave, and then they said, oh, well, we can't because we have a national policy.
Right.
So, yeah, it would leave all the councils open to enormous pressure if they do this, and it would destroy them.
Bob, you mentioned in this article that last summer the Boy Scouts completed a 2-year review of this policy. And they said, basically, look, the people who participate in the Boy Scouts don't want us to change, so we're going to stick with the policy. But then 6 months later, they begin to reconsider this policy. Is this simply financial pressure from the United Way and UPS, which dropped their funding, and groups like that? Is that simply money pressure that caused this flip-flop?
I think it's partly money pressure, and it's partly the pressure of political correctness. Where people are told if they don't go along with this, they're on the wrong side of the civil rights issue of our era. They're totally wrong about that. This is not like skin color or ethnicity, which have no moral a bearing at all. This is about behavior, and behavior that is patently dangerous. When you look at what happened with the Roman Catholic Church and the homosexual priests who molested hundreds, if not thousands, of boys and young men, why would the Scouts even be messing with this at all? They've won all their court cases. They recently won one in San Diego. At the Ninth Circuit Court, the most liberal appeals court in the country, said the Scouts have a right to stay in the city park in San Diego. So there's really no legal pressure for them to do this. It's really coming from people who have bought into the homosexual agenda, the idea that, hey, morality no longer matters, people can do whatever they want. Let's force the Boy Scouts to adopt that set of values.
We're talking to Robert Knight. Your column is, where can you find your column?
Well, you could find it at theacru.org, because I write for the American Civil Rights Union, and we put all my columns up on that site. You can also find it at washingtontimes.com. Just put my name in the search engine, Robert Knight.
Okay.
And by the way, I have a column today in the Washington Times on a different topic. It's Obama calling for universal preschool registration. And I kind of fire both barrels, saying, this is the kidnapping lobby at work. They want our kids even earlier than they get them in the government schools. don't be fooled. They want to get your toddler and brainwash them at an earlier age. So my wife even said, wow, you fired both barrels on this one.
Well, Bob, we appreciate it. I'd like to have you back on to talk about that topic when we have more time.
Oh, definitely.
Because
I'd be happy to.
You know, the federal government getting it, they already got the Head Start program,
which has been a huge success. So that's been money well spent.
Yeah. And
tongue in cheek.
What they proved basically was that those in Head Start, by the time you get to third grade, are no different than the other students who haven't gone to Head Start. Isn't that basically it, Bob?
Yeah.
That is it, and they base most of their success on something entirely unrelated, this little preschool in Ypsilanti, Michigan, that has a totally different program. They've been selling Head Start on the basis of that success.
Yeah.
It's a bait and switch. And
hey, Bob, we'll have you back on to talk about that. Thanks for your time, my friend. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Tim and Ed. Good talking with you.
Thanks, Bob.
That's Bob Knight joining us, or Robert Knight. We call him Bob because
we can. It's your show.
We can,
you can call him
and
whatever
I've known
you
him
want.
as Bob forever, but he goes under the pen name Robert. But Robert Knight, Knight. We shall return with more after this short break. Stay with us.